Shishiranda Bandava ki jai, Shishi Vijay Gauranga Nita ki jai, Nita Gautamnandi. Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So we continue studying the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, chapter 5. And today we'll take a look at text number 6. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So in the last couple of verses, we've seen Hiranyakashipu asking his son Prahlad what he had learned, and Prahlad Maharaj, surprisingly for Hiranyakashipu, said that he learned that one should live material life and take shelter in Krishna. So today Narada Muni will explain the reaction of Hiranyakashipu to that suggestion. Shri Narada Vacha Shrutva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahita Jahasa Buddhir Balana Vidyati Parabuddhi Bihi.
Shri Narada Uvacha Shrutva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahita Jahasa Buddhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhi
Narada Uvacha Shrutva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahita Jahasa Buddhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhi. Narada Uvacha Shrutva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahita Jahasa Buddhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhi.
Shri Narada Uvacha Shrutva Putra Giro Daitya Parapaksha Samahita Jahasa Buddhir Balanam Vidyate Parabuddhi.
Shri Narada Vacha. Narada Muni said, Shrutva, hearing, Putra Gira, the instructive words of his son, Daityaha, Hiranyakashipu, Parapaksha, on the side of the enemy. Samahita, full of faith. Jahasa, laughed. Buddhihi, the intelligence. Balanam, of small boys. Vidhyati, is polluted. Parabhuddhibihi, by instructions from the enemy's camp. Translation, purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Narada Muni continued, when Prahlad Maharaj spoke about the path of self-realization in devotional service, thus being faithful to the camp of his father's enemies, Hiranyakashipu, the king of the demons, heard Prahlad's words and he laughingly said, thus is the intelligence of children spoiled by the words of the enemy. Hiranyakashipu, being a demon, would always consider Lord Vishnu and his devotees to be his enemies. Therefore, the word parapaksha, on the side of the enemy, is used here. Hiranyakashipu never agreed with the words of Vishnu or Krishna. Rather, he was angered by the intelligence of a Vaishnava. Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna says, Sarva dharmam parityaja mamikam sharanam vraja. Give up all other duties and surrender unto me. But demons like Hiranyakashipu never agree to do this. Therefore, Krishna says, Namam duskritino mudaha prapadyante naradamaha mayaya paritagyana asuram bhavam ashritaha. Quote, those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 7.15. The Asura Bhava, the atheistic nature, is directly represented by Hiranyakashipu. Such persons, being Mudha and Naradama, fools and rascals, the lowest of men, would never accept Vishnu as the supreme and surrender to him. Hiranyakashipu naturally became increasingly angry that his son Prahlad was being influenced by the camp of the enemies. He therefore asked that saintly persons like Narada not be allowed within the residential quarters of his son, for otherwise Prahlad would be further spoiled by Vaishnava instructions. Om Ganati Virandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshuramitam Nina Tasmai Shri Guru Namo Shabdakasham Om Vishabdakasham Stabhadre Shimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurvani Pracharne Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vanchakal Parvasya Grivasana Shavashnebhyo Namo Namo. Can we see the translation again? Oh, it's too hard?
Yeah, it's off. It's will be maybe 5 minutes.
Oh, no, it's okay. Then forget about it. Anyway. So here we see a snapshot, a picture of a face of the conflict between father and son. At this stage, the conflict is not so serious. In fact, you can see Hiranyakashipu just laughs. He doesn't take so seriously what Prahlad said. Prahlad just spoke one verse, and now Hiranyakashipu is speaking a few words here, and then he tells the teachers, be careful, be careful. Is not yet at the point of complete breakdown of the relation, like we see in the cover. At this stage, this is later on in the story, Hiranyakashipu throws Prahlad down from his lap. He doesn't want to have anything to do with him. In fact, he tries in many ways to kill him. But here, the tension is mild. It's mild. Still, there is tension because obviously what Prahlad says is completely opposed to what the values of the demons are. One may actually wonder how come the demons, such as Hiranyakashipu, had these brahmanas as teachers or as professors in the Gurukula. This chapter started by saying that Hiranyakashipu chose Shukracharya as his priest. So we need to understand that sometimes the words that are used in a language or in a culture that don't mean the same thing in another culture. Like for instance, Hiranyakashipu was described as an atheist, but it's a different concept of atheism. Nowadays, when you say atheism is very, very common and becoming increasingly common in Germany. When you say atheism, means people don't believe in a supreme person. Just they say, no, there is no God. There is no supreme entity that controls or creates everything. Everything is simply a spontaneous manifestation of atoms that somehow got created in a primordial explosion, and then by combining casually, they form different things, molecules and cells. They became actually alive, conscious, and from this unicellular being, they start becoming bigger and bigger till elephants and giraffes and humans and artificial intelligence and all that. So that's their worldview. So the atheism of Hiranyakashipu was different. It was more like a negative God consciousness. He knew about Vishnu, but he was purposefully inimical to Vishnu, also because Vishnu had killed his brother. So sometimes we see this among less enlightened people, that there is a vendetta, a revenge going on for generations. Your people did this to my people some time back, so now we are doing this to your people, and then it never ends, because you can always say that, oh, you did this to me, and it could be in a subtle way, subtle meaning non-bloody way. There's no bloodshed, like imposing some tariffs, no? Your goods, if they come to my country, they have to pay so much. Or it could be an open fight in which people physically kill each other, try to destroy the bodies of others, or try to conquer territory. And so the world is in this situation. Anybody who has any sense of the world today, any sense of history, you see that there is so much conflict. So Hiranyakashipu believes in God, but he doesn't accept God. He doesn't accept the supremacy of God. But he accepts certain laws of God. In fact, we saw when he performs austerity and then Brahma comes down, he accepts that Brahma is the Lord of the universe. He just tries to get some materialistic boon, tries to get some form of immortality, some form of immunity from death. So in this context, we understand how he accepted Shukracharya as a priest. Now, the word priest in English or in other European languages may not exactly translate the word Brahmana, because a priest generally How do you say priest in German? Priester. So a priest is more of a religious, ritualistic performer. Like in Köln, we have different churches, and there are many priests, and in their churches they perform certain rituals. They invoke the Lord, or they connect the faithful to the Lord through different sacraments, like the marriage. They perform weddings, they perform baptisms, they perform confirmations, they perform different religious things. So priest is specifically a religious connotation, but Brahmana is much more broad as a conception. See, in the Vedic times, Brahmanas, they were not thinking, they were doing religion. They were thinking, we are doing science. They knew certain laws of nature, and through their rituals, through their formula, incantations and mantras, they could affect material nature. They could affect material nature, either by themselves or officiating on behalf of others, like kings and other people. So this word ritvik, which means priest in priest, or the one who performed the sacrifice, is actually come from the word ritu. Ritu means seasons. In India, they consider there are 6 seasons. Here in the West, there are 4 seasons. In the Middle East, there are only 2 seasons. So in India, there are 6 seasons, and there are seasonal yagyas, seasonal homa, traditionally. I'm not saying in nowadays India. India nowadays is the second larger exporter of beef in the world. So you can understand what kind of culture now they have adopted. But traditionally, there were 2 types of sacrifice. One is the home sacrifice that the brahmanas and other dvijas should do every day, and they can manage in the family. And one is the big sacrifices that the state has to sponsor, the king has to sponsor. Big Ashwamedha Yagya, Gomedha Yagya. Just like in nowadays, say you may have a little garden and in your house, and you manage your garden. You plant different trees, you plant maybe little tomatoes and flowers, and you manage with your own finance your little garden, little or bigger, but it's your private garden. But big parks are managed by the municipality or sometimes by the state, like national parks. It's not a private enterprise. It's not that one person can manage a national park. You need the government to put funds, to put people in charge. So similarly, or things like roads. Maybe you have a garden, you can build a little road inside the garden, but big autobahn or big highways, the state has to do it. The government has to do it. So similarly, in Vedic culture, there are some sacrifices that the state has to sponsor, and others which are more private. So in this context, we can understand how Hiranyakashipu takes a Brahmana. He's not interested in a religious, especially Vedic religious theistic sacrifice. Is interested in somebody who knows how the laws of nature work, so that he can do something for the benefit of the state, the kingdom, and his own family. Just like in the Islamic religion, Islamic culture, there are mullah, and sometimes in English it's translated as clerics. But that's not they themselves say this is not the exact translation. Clerics, it's a religious performer, but mullah means an expert on the scripture, an expert on the law, for something like more similar for us to say to a judge. When you speak of a judge, you don't speak of a religious person. You speak somebody who knows the law, has studied the books of law, and can apply in different circumstances. So, just like physicists nowadays, physicists, they may have their own personal philosophy, but they are engaged by all sorts of governments. It could be officially like atheistic governments like North Korea, or it could be an officially religious government like the Islamic Republic of Iran. But physicists are welcome and engaged everywhere. At least countries which are trying for advanced science, advanced technology, advanced research, like that. Maybe some countries in Africa, they don't have much engagement for physicists, but normal countries, they engage scientists, researchers, because it's like in one sense, it's a common playing field. We are dealing with the same laws of nature, the same laws of physics, and so there's some expert that you engage. So in this context, the Brahmanas are engaged even by a atheist, or that kind of atheist, a demon, a daitya, like Hiranyakashipu. So sometimes the words needs to be a little bit understood, and in their translation. Of course, Srila Prabhupada did perfect translations, but sometimes it's just that the words available in the dictionary may or may not be a perfect translation of the words. Just like, for instance, the word incarnation. Now, incarnation in all the Latin languages, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, French, it sounds a little strange because carne means flesh. How do you say carne in German or Dutch? Huh? Flesh, like flesh in English, right? Same, Dutch? Flesh. But in Italian it's carne. So when you say incarnation, in the Latin world, it means like entering into the flesh, which is not the meaning of incarnation. Incarnation means emanation, expansion. When Srila Prabhupada used incarnation, like in the famous third chapter of the Bhagavatam, it says, Krishna is the source of all incarnations. It doesn't mean it's the source of all these divine entities that incarnate in the sense that they enter flesh. They don't enter flesh. Anyway, it's just an example. At some time, just the dictionary has some limitations. So back to the point, Brahmanas are useful in society to religious people and to irreligious people. In a culture where Brahmanas are real Brahmanas, and they really know what they're doing, and they have powers because of their austerity, because of the study of the Vedas, because of their formula, then they're welcome. They're welcome even by Hiranyakashipu. Like Srila Prabhupada writes and says that traditionally all Brahmanas knew two things, Ayurveda and Jyotish. They knew Ayurveda. In other words, they were all, we could say, doctors, maybe not professional doctors, all Ayurvedic doctors, like a full-time doctor, but they knew about Ayurveda. And everybody knew astrology. Maybe not professional astrologer, like full-time astrologer, but all Brahmanas knew some astrology, calculation. And Srila Prabhupada said, everyone is interested in health, and everybody is interested in the future. So the Brahmana could be maintained. In fact, people may not ask them spiritual questions. Okay, what's the goal of life? what is Brahman? What's the best understanding of Brahman? They may not ask these things, but they ask, oh, how can see my son is sick? How can we cure him? And so he gives some herbs, he gives some medicine, or okay, my daughter is getting married, how to know if there is compatibility in the marriage, and then they will calculate, okay, this your daughter is from this nakshatra, the bridegroom is from this other nakshatra, yeah, it could work, Or sometimes say, no, these two nakshatras, they should never get married, so don't find somebody else, like that. So, in fact, the research has shown that even nowadays, for instance, in America, people go to their priests mostly for other reasons. They ask about career, they ask about depression, they ask about so many mundane things. They don't ask, okay, how do I understand the Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? But practically nobody asks these things. Nobody asks theological questions to priests. They ask social, and in fact, you can see the priests nowadays speak about social issues mostly. The hunger in the world, the peace in the world. They hardly speak about God. Some of you may know Parabhakti Prabhu is the temple president in Villa Vrindavan, Florence. He's also the vice president of ISKCON Communication for the whole Europe. And he's also in charge of communication for ISKCON Italy. And he told me how he does this interfaith meetings, sometime in Villa Vrindavan. And he himself at one point, because said there is this problem in interfaith. I don't know if anybody does interfaith, but because there are the Buddhists, then you cannot say God, because the Buddhists don't believe in God, but so you want to be friendly, so you cannot talk about God. So the whole discussion becomes quite empty or superficial or very vague, no? Okay, peace, harmony. So then at one point he was talking, especially with Christian priests, but he was saying, well, let's talk also about God. What is our relation with God? What is our experience of God? Maybe for the Buddhists, we give another formula. What is your experience of nothingness? Or whatever. We need to keep them peaceful. And he told me how people actually appreciate it. Because, you can see sometimes even religious leaders, they do not talk about God. They do not talk about God. Personally, I like this new Pope. Seems a very nice person. First of all, he's very educated. He has a PhD in mathematics. Plus, he has been a missionary in Peru many years. And he seems a very reasonable person. So I like this new Pope, Pope Leo, right? There's a new Pope. I don't know how much you follow, but you must have heard. Now it's more than 100 days. Is the new Pope. So I like him as a person. Same time when I read in the newspaper what he says, he hardly, often he speaks about things which are, okay, so peace in the world and things which are very, we could say, superficial. Peace, we are also for peace in one sense, but okay, once you have peace, what do you do? There are so many countries who are in peace, but they're becoming more and more atheistic. So peace in itself is not the solution of the humanity's problem. So similarly, Shanda and Amarka, the sons of Shukracharya, were taken as professors mostly of sociology and politics. And so they're not spiritual authority, but they know. Of course, Hiranyakashipu, as a king, wanted his son to also become the next king, and therefore a king needs to know how to make friends, or how to deal with enemies in the most productive way, in the most fruitful way. Sometimes you got to have a war, sometimes you got to have a treaty, sometimes you have to be diplomatic. There are different options on the table. And kings should know, kings, rulers, chancellors, whatever, whoever is in charge, whoever interacts with other political entity need to know, okay, these are the options and which one is the best. Sometimes you have to make a war, sometimes you don't have to make a war. There are certain international. Are we in Westphalia? This is Westphalia?
Noch eines war.
Where is Westphalia?
Should das was war? Ich meine, das ist noch eines war.
Are we in Westphalia or not? It's a simple question. It's not a trick question.
Noch eines.
Westphalia is somewhere else. Because there is a famous Treaty of Westphalia that shaped a lot of international relationship. Basically, the kings and the potentates came together and said, okay, we don't deal with internal politics of another state. Anyway, there is a lot of hundreds of years of international law, international treaties. Of course, many times people don't follow treaties, but they make these treaties, they make this agreement, these contracts among countries. Anyway, so Shanda and Amarka, they are not spiritual counselors or theologians. They may have their own theology, but here they are as sociologists, they are as politologists, like that. And obviously, Prahlad Maharaj doesn't like what he asked, what they had to teach. Therefore, and because his real teacher is Narada Muni, who taught him in the womb. So when Hiranyakashipu asked, okay, what did you learn? What's the best thing you learned? Is, yeah, we should give up everything and go and take shelter in Krishna. And here Hiranyakashipu laughs. But later on, will become very, very, very angry. In fact, Srila Prabhupada said that, I don't have a quote, but he said, first people will laugh. No, they see Hare Krishna, they just laugh. They're dressed in a bizarre way because it's a very strange way. The hairdo and the dress, and they chant with exotic instruments and they chant mantras like that in the streets. So first people, they laugh, then they become angry, and then they'll join, then they will actually appreciate, because people can become familiar with anything. So once they become familiar and once they listen to what Hare Krishna have to say, reasonable people will say, yeah, it makes sense. Yes, makes sense. Okay, these are some considerations. Any question or reflections, comments, insights you want to share? Do you want to read your notes?
No, not really. I just wrote down what they said.
But you can give us a summary.
No, we don't think it's.
You wrote in English? So read something for us, read a summary.
Yeah, you start with that we see conflict between father and son, which is not as serious yet as it will become. It really stuck to my mind because in the end you said Hiranyakashipu will become very, very angry later on. And I like this transition, like this thinking about how he doesn't take it serious in the beginning. And then you were talking about priests at Shukracharya, what is priests and how priests can also be used for material benefit, doing yagyas.
Brahmanas, yes.
Yes, Brahmins. We're also talking about rage and revenge, which sometimes lasts or often lasts for several generations. Brahmins. They were very expert and also many of them, all of them knew some Ayurveda and Jyotish as a basic foundation to also support mundane people who are only interested in material benefits. Is it like this that also this trust in Brahmins can be developed or was developed in the past? That mundane people like this, they develop trust in Brahmins?
Yeah, because see, like for instance, this Gomeda, Shwameda, Srila Prabhupada explained, they were very technical, very sophisticated yagyas. In fact, they would put a cow in the fire, an old cow in the fire, then they would pull out a fresh cow, a young cow. So obviously these are like miracles for people, right? So they, and not only that, but they will say, they will teach the kingdom how they could have opulence, like, okay, you do these yagyas, there will be regular seasons, there will be regular rains. So people will actually see the benefits. It was not just, see, nowadays priests, in general, I'm talking in general, not just Christian priests. Sometimes the benefit that they can give is it's more like, okay, you know, you do these things, and then at the end of life, you'll have a paradise, you'll have some heaven. But often the benefits are just for the future. That's called, in philosophy, it's called eschatology. What happens at the time of death? They don't have many solutions for nowadays for okay, how do I improve my health? They don't know, because they eat the same thing as everybody else. And I mean, even the Dalai Lama is non-vegetarian. No, no. Once he met what's the Archbishop of Canterbury, the church leader in England, he had to cook meat for him. So, I mean, I have a friend, a good brother who in Brazil does a lot of interfaith, even start a band, like a pop music, modern music band, interfaith. There is him, he's a Hare Krishna, then you got a Buddhist, then you got the different Christians, then you got an Islamic, it's a band. I don't remember the name, because you can find on YouTube. I don't like them very much. I mean, but but anyway, it's a band. They do concerts, modern music, electric guitar, battery, and each one is dressed in their own dress. What's the name? I don't remember. Something about peace. Anyway, and he told me. I mean, he told me in private. He told me these people don't follow anything. I mean, any of the, maybe something, but eating especially, even the Buddha, they eat everything. And they have their own philosophy, you know, so everything is one, you know. There's a story in Thailand, in Thailand they go with the little bowl. If you've been in Bangkok or in Thailand, you see in the morning, 6 o'clock, they go with this. And whatever they get, they get. And there is all the idealism of that. Whatever falls into that, you eat. So sometimes you go, there is a story of a monk going to beg from a leper. So the leper, the leper has a leprosy. So at one point he tried to give something, and a finger fell inside the bowl, and then the guy ate the finger because it was. Well, they idealize that. I don't know. It could be. It could be. I wouldn't be surprised. Once I was doing book distribution in Bangkok. I didn't know any Thai. I was there since 2 days, so the devotees gave me a little sign, no, and saying, I don't remember what to say, but say something like, these are books for you, and you can give a donation. The only word that I knew in Thai was tambun. Tambun means donation. No, so it made it very easy because I couldn't discuss, debate, or do nothing. No? I would just give a book, show this, and then say tambun. And some people took, and I even went to a Buddhist convent, and there was a Buddhist monk, probably the chief there. He was eating fish. No, he was eating fish, and there was a cat eating in the in the same plate he was eating. So I really, whoa, you know. And then I gave him a book. I said, "Tambun." He looked at me. He bought a book somehow, you know. So sometime, how we came to Thailand? How we came?
People don't follow anything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, many times. And I mean, I don't want to be not a fanatic Hare Krishna. This people. No, but if you see basic, even rules of cleanliness or diet, no vegetarians. Jai, jai. Ay, jai, Gauranga. At least this friend who has a lot of experience working, they don't follow much. And again, I don't want to give the impression. There are people who are very sincere and they're working hard in their context, in the religious, and they know they pray to God. They have a strong belief, they have strong faith. They are, in fact, like for instance, if you see the Catholic priests, generally are much better in terms of, at least quantitatively, they are better trained than our leaders. I mean, in our society, it's still very young, still very, we could say, in a growing curve and learning curve. And sometimes you can become more or less anything without specific training. There's no like a mandatory course to become a temple president or a temple council member. It's more we could see, okay, he's a good devotee, okay, put him in the council, like that. It's more like still quite spontaneous, right? But these priests, they have, first of all, they have a high school degree, and then they have 4 years of seminary, in which they learn the liturgy, in which they learn the theology, in which they learn some pastoral counseling. I was seeing a curriculum of some priests, some Christian priests in England, and they had under 50 hours only on counseling. Because people come to them with all sorts of problems, right? All sorts of problems, financial problem, mental problem, pregnancy problem, all sorts of problems, immigration problems, any problem, they go to the priest, and somehow they have to have the training to, maybe they're not, obviously they may not be career counselors or financial counselors or gynecologists, but they have to listen to these people, say something. So under 50 hours just on counseling. Although they're not, I mean, they're priests, they're not professional counselors, they're not psychotherapists, but they had to act. So we need to appreciate that they're around since a long time, and they definitely have, what do you call, helped civilization and people being more humane. So we need to appreciate whatever they've done. I'm not trying to dismiss or denigrate 2,000 years of work, material, spiritual, religious work. I'm not trying to, but from the point of view of Vedic culture, we are quite far. Once they ask, I say, I'm not a fan of Gandhi, okay, for different reasons. But I like one time, he said, he was in England, they asked him, and a journalist asked, what do you think of Western civilization? And he said, I think it would be a good idea. Did you get that? In other words, it would be a good idea if the West was civilized. Anyway, Hare Krishna. Yes.
I wanted to ask you,
Oh.
because of your Italian background,
Oh.
and El Papa is situated in your country.
No, it's a separate country. It's in Italy, but it's a separate country.
Okay, that's new. The Druids, I think, would they not compare to what the Brahmins were doing?
The Druids.
Druids.
Yeah, there are. See, as you know, Varnashram is not just an Indian or Vedic thing. Varnashram is a blueprint of society. So, throughout the world, there are these four basic paradigms or basic archetypes.
If we continue, I'm hinting at I was once researching what was the pre-Christian religion of Europe and how did it get blasted away by the Christians. Like that, because you talk about conflict. In that sense, there were Druids also in the time. I think they don't belong to the Christian sect. Is it?
No, Druids. No, Druids generally are from, it's like shamans or medicine men. Yeah, and there are still maybe not so big, but there are people who try to follow these ancient traditions like that. But what I was saying is that there are archetypes. So in every place in the world, wherever you want, there are some brahmanas or some reflection of brahmanas. So you have either religious priests, mullah, or you have shamans, you have medicine men, people who know more than other people. They may communicate with some form of ghosts or nature spirits, or they know more about say magic and things. So yeah, and of course Druids, they were everywhere in Europe, so each one will have their own local traditions in the local, like in Germany, in Scandinavia, they use this rune for divinations. They throw the runes and see, okay, the future, what the future holds. And in Rome, before the Christians, they had this people, oracles. They will see the future in different ways. Sometimes they will count the birds every society has developed some sort of divination, try to understand the science. Like in India, there's the whole tradition of omens, good omens, bad omens. You see somebody walking with a full bucket of water is a good omen. You see an elephant is a good omen. You see the cat crossing from left to right. No, you laugh, but so there are omens. In other words, they develop a sensitivity to what the Prakriti tells you. So sometimes there's warnings. And so, yeah, so Druids, another type of shamans, medicine men, they are basically, we could say, they correspond to the Brahmanas in Varnashram. Just like every society has got rulers, some people who's in charge, some people who makes decisions for the rest, either because they are dictators or because they are elected, presidents, chancellor, prime ministers, and then everywhere there are traders, people who are interested in economy, building something, meaning building and selling, and then there are people who are artisans, computer programmers. No, they have a skill and they live with their skill. Carpenters, plumbers, like that. So yeah.
Now this Christian conflict, is it in their religion to conquer and convert? Because all of Europe's religions have been wiped out by them.
Well, it may not be in the gospel. It may not be. Jesus never said, "Go get all the Druids and put them in a concentration camp." It's often there was a merging. Generally when religion expands somewhere, any religion, either they wipe out or they try to wipe out the local culture, or there is a mixture. They become mixed up with the local culture, either because people are attached to their traditions or because the traditions were actually useful and they get integrated. And sometimes there is a conflict, and sometimes there is integration. Like, for instance, the Buddhists were very, very expert. I mean, the Buddhists from one place in India, North India, they conquered the whole Asia, basically, right? I mean, they were very expert to going somewhere and convince the local people the Buddhist was higher and like that. But sometimes, like when they got into Tibet, they really got mixed up. Tibetan Buddhists, like, it's a mixture between Yaksha culture and Buddhist culture. And so they got into so many, magics and things like that. And this happens also, I mean, in the whole Russia or even Italy, there are still this, traditions of black magics, sending curses, which has nothing to do with Christianity. I mean, if you see the gospel, but there are people in Christianity, for instance, there are people who are possessed by ghosts. So that everywhere in the world, there were and there are people who deal with ghosts, and they may not have anything to do with their official religion, but they deal with that because that's the market. That's what the market wants. People wants to do black magic. People wants to curse. People have envy. And so there is a lot of mixtures. In other words, it's not like, okay, there is some, say, local religion, animistic religion, and then the Christian comes, it's all gone. Often there is it remains unofficial, but it remains. Like in Africa, if you go to, say, Ghana or Nigeria, you have Nigeria is half Muslim, the north especially, and half Christian, but there is a lot of black magic. They call it juju. There's a lot. There's a lot. So, see, sometimes what I do, if I had to give a Sunday class, and sometimes I'm so lazy, I'm always lazy, but if I'm especially lazy and I don't want to prepare, what sometimes I do in different places in the world, I do, okay, so what are the problems that you face? I ask people. I give pieces of paper and they write the problems they face. So most problems are like, lack of time, like that. With Indians, sometimes it's that, I see the Devata worship, I'm not clear about Devata worship. Once I did it in Africa and Ghana, I just gave paper to everybody, and more than one person wrote juju was their problem in life, black magic. And devotees, sometimes they want to distribute prasad, people don't take it. Because the culture is so strong about black magic. You give something to somebody, they know that you may give some curse. Sometimes, even though they may be poor, but you try to give prasada, they don't take it. Sometimes. So sometimes there are strata in the culture. There is an official like religion, but then there is we could say the original or previous culture, which is still alive in different forms, and sometimes they just get integrated. Sometimes even in daily thing, like for instance, there's nothing in the Bible, as far as I know, there's nothing in the gospel, in the teaching of Jesus, how you deal with corpses, right? But somehow you grow up in a culture that, okay, corpses are put in a coffin and then you put 6 feet underground, and then you put a marble slate with the name. There's nothing to do with Christianity.
Has it to do with the Romans?
I'm not sure where it comes from. There should be, we could Google it. We could ask ChatGPT. But in other words, there are many things in daily life that has nothing to do with really the teachings of the books. But it's kind of, it's a habit, it's a practice. Okay, somebody dies, you do this, and where it comes from, sometimes people don't even know.
What is the major conflict in Christianity that Protestants came up with?
Well, Protestants, and by the way, the main Protestant was a German, was Martin Luther. He had a lot of issue with the way the Pope was. For instance, the Pope was, the Pope, at the time, Pope were just another king, okay? They will do wars and stuff. They also built these huge churches, and they needed a lot of money. So the Pope and the Christianity at the time decided as a marketing to say, they started selling indulgences, meaning you give money, and not only your karma gets diminished, but you can save your father, grandfather, that may be in hell, but you, by giving money to Rome, by giving money to the Vatican, you will save them from hell. They just invented this. In fact, there was a famous monk who was going around in Germany, and he had the mantra. He said, look, it was something like, in English, I don't know in German, but I'm sure also in German will rhyme, but in English was, as soon as the coin in the box rings, the soul of your grandfather from hell springs. Do you know the German? And so Martin Luther was totally fried with this thing, but he had a lot of issues. In fact, when he's a famous, what was that, Wittenberg? He was in Wittenberg, a place. He was a professor. He was a Catholic professor. And he put, at one point, he nailed to the church, how many was? 64? Not many Lutherans here. Okay, so anyways, 64 or dozens of points that he was against the Pope, against Rome. So then, but there was a prince who liked him, so they protected him, because Germany was different princes and this and that. And somehow he managed not to get burnt, somehow. And so people started following him. And then finally said, look, there's nothing in the Bible that the priest should not be married, which is right? I mean, why Brahmana should not be married? So he said, no. So he got married. He was a monk. Then he got married with an ex-nun, and they had 6 children, like that. And so he changed a little bit. Basically, the structure was the same. I mean, the Bible. One big thing he did is that at that time, there was a lot of, the priests would keep the Bible just for themselves. But he said no, and was just in Latin. And so he said no. So one major thing he did is translate the Bible into German. So because he's saying, look, everybody should have access to the Bible. It's the Word of God, not just the priests. So he printed the Bible, and because at that time there was also Gutenberg, who was also a German, right? A lot of things came from Germany, so because they're very intelligent people. So Gutenberg invented the press. Before that, printing books was, well, you cannot print books. You had to write books, right? Like in India, not that one by one. So with the press, they started printing the Bible, and everybody could read the Bible. And this was the fried, it really fried the priests in Rome, because they said before was a monopoly. They only have the Bible, they only can speak Latin, they only can explain. And then when the people started reading, they said, but they say this, but it's not in the Bible. And so it was a major revolution. And you may be surprised, but at one point in England, for instance, just to have the translation of the Bible in English was a capital crime. You could get killed just by having even a page of the Bible translated into English. It was a different world. It was a different world. And the first one who translated the Bible into English was an extremely religious person, a great scholar, Greek, Latin, he knew Hebrew, he knew everything. He had to escape England. And then they caught him, I think, in Belgium. They brought him back to England and they killed him. And his crime was to translate the Bible. It was a different world, I tell you. It was a complete different world. Now we see Christians print Bible, try to give it to as much as possible all over the world. But before, the conception was that just to translate the Bible was a crime punishable. Even having a Bible in your language, in your house, would be punishable by death.
It looks like removing the Taliban, No democracy, only this, and then he showed his Quran.
No, but at least the Taliban promote you know what Taliban means? No. Student. So they study their thing, and they promote that. At least they don't. I don't think if you have a Quran in your language, they mind. In fact, it's translated, right? They speak.
You shouldn't know everything in Arab language, isn't it? Otherwise you can't go.
No, they actually Taliban speak mostly Farsi.
What I understood is that these surahs, you have to memorize them in the original language.
Well, we also do that in the Bhagavad Gita, but we don't burn people. We don't burn people who have.
He described that he was caught and brought up to England and was killed.
Ah.
That mood you described.
Ah.
That macabre mood. That is what I don't know. The press is or the media is promoting that's the Islamic world now.
No. First of all, the Islamic world is very big. I mean, you have Islam people right in the street, right? Mostly as Islamic. You have this halal. See in the corner, there is this big Orientalesque market. They say halal food. So Islam, there are more than 1.5 billion people who are Islamic people. And there is the whole range. Most people are we live in Mayapur, our gardener and our not only gardener, but it's like our trusted man for everything. We left Mayapur, we gave him the key. He has the key of our house, and he's a Muslim. And in Mayapur, often the Muslims are more religious and more nice than the Hindus. Because the Hindu, they have all the mafia of the milk. It's a sin. So the world sometimes they have this Islamophobia, no? Sometimes even ISKCON devotees have this Islamophobia. Everything is Islamic. But there are many things. Islam saved the culture of Europe. Europe had forgotten completely the classics, like the Greek, Aristotle and Socrates. Nobody knew anything. It's a Muslim scholar, which the Latinized name is Avicenna, who reintroduced this to Europe. And they had so much advancement in astronomy, in mathematics, in architecture. So we are talking about a huge culture, which had a huge positive effect in civilizing a large part of the world. Then, of course, in any culture, you see the three gunas, right? You see tamas, rajas, and sattva. So there are many Islamic people who are in sattva guna. Some in tamo guna, they become suicide bombers. But those are not very poor people. They get easily manipulated. Like the Christians, they are very, if you interact with some Christians, they are very nice people. They pray to God, they believe in God, and they study the Bible, they do charity. And then there are some Christians who maybe just come to Ratha Yatra and disturb and say, Jesus is the only way, Jesus, Jesus, turn or burn, turn or burn. Turn means convert or burn in hell. But that's like, this Pope, for instance, this Pope, I don't know if you saw in Facebook or social media, this Pope, one of the first things he did is to invite all the other religions and two Hare Krishna from Rome. Actually, there were two bhaktas. I don't know why they couldn't find anybody initiated, but two bhaktas went to see the Pope. You saw that? You see that? You saw that? So you have the Pope and two bhaktas. Like, no, he took a photo with each, Buddhist, all the religious traditions. And for us, there were two bhaktas from Rome, and they have the photo, the Pope and the two bhaktas. And all three are dressed in white. Now I need to leave you because I have an engagement at 9 o'clock. So thank you very much for your attention, for your patience, and for your interest. Hare Krishna. Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada ki. Prahlad Maharaj ki Jai. Hiranyakashipu ki. That was a trick.